My guest this hour is Ricard Dresser, screenwriter and playwright. His work has been widely produced on and off Broadway. He's worked in TV for years on shows such as The Days and Nights of Molly Dodd, The Job, and Life Coach starring Sherry O'Terry. I invited him on to talk about his interesting new current events fiction, It Happened Here. Here is the first segment of our interview. Ricard, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Your book, It Happened Here, is kind of current events fiction. And, LA Law ripped from the headlines kind of deal from a political standpoint. So tell us where the idea of the book came from.
Well, the idea really came from my feeling that, we're obviously living in this country with this enormous partisan divide. And it's very hard for a lot of people to listen to the other side. And so I've been tangling with this. And I came up with this idea. And I'm a playwright. I've been a playwright for a long time. And I had never written a novel. Mm-hmm. So what I decided to do was write an oral history of an American family from 2020 to 2035. In other words, this family is looking back on the 15 years that we're facing. Mm-hmm. And so everything that happens, starting before the election, the last election on November 3rd, it's the buildup, it's people's anxiety about the election, what happens after the election, and what happens in the subsequent years. And so there's no narrator for the book. It's all dialogue. It's all people talking. Mm-hmm. And the setup is it's a family in the Midwest, two brothers. One of them served in the military. He has a private security company, and he's a very conservative guy, and his kids are pretty conservative. His brother is a history teacher, didn't serve, and very liberal. And so it's the challenge of how a family endures and stays together through the kind of vicious fighting that goes on between left and right. And, my feeling is it's ultimately a hopeful book, but it's a hard time getting there, because the situation we're in this country is not easy. And I wanted to write about it, not from the perspective of political satire or big political things, although that is in the book. It's really from the intimacy of people in a family. And what do you do when your cousin is politically far away from you? You need that cousin for something, or you love that cousin. How do you reach out? So it's like it came out before the election, and there were people, my agent included, who were so nervous about the election, they couldn't read the book until after.
So I like the fact that it is looking back. I like the fact that it is small and large at the same time. So it's focused on this family and their interactions and how the outside forces are affecting them and how they relate to each other. But you do have this large piece that's lingering, right? Because there is a slight twist to the presidency from, what happened in that election. So that adds a component to it. So tell them what happened with the 2020 election, because it's not really who won, right?
Well, here's the thing. A friend of mine read a draft of the book, and he said, I have been sleeping so badly lately. And after reading your book, I'm not going to sleep at all, because you hit on something that's truly terrifying. And what it is because of various events, security events, the election is postponed. And so the president cannot decide that unilaterally. Congress has to do that, but Congress goes along with it. And it comes out of this national security threat. And so the whole first part of the book, the election, is always a month away. So it's like,
wow.
I'm telling you, it's a harrowing book, but it's a pretty funny book too, because it's about the world that we're in, and the dial is just turned a bit. And the characters are living in this place that seems to go on forever, where they're always facing the election. Certain names are never mentioned. The president is always referred to as the great leader by everybody.
That's not similar to certain other countries, because I was going to ask you, is the president based on anyone we know? Like the president named Ronald Crump or something like that?
No. I started to go down that road, and then I thought, you know what? I don't want it to be about that. I want it to be about, in our system of government, there is this opening, which in a particularly feverish moment, I came up with, which is the idea that the election, we've never had a postponed election, but it could happen with being sanctioned by Congress. And so there is a satirical element in the book about the great leader, which is the history professor loses his job and his marriage falls apart and he's living in a rooming house. And every night with these people in the rooming house, he starts doing these political riffs about the great leader. And there is a woman in the rooming house who films them and puts them online, and he becomes a big internet hero. And those things are pretty extreme and pretty wild. And it's his riff on the great leader. And I'll just tell you one, and I hope none of your listeners will be offended, but in one of them, every time the great leader tells a lie, his breasts grow an inch.
So that leads me to again, in the marketing materials, you talk about how it is important that your book resonates with everyone. So on the surface, obviously, a decent percentage of the population would hear the description of the book, see the cover, hear your live breast story, and think that it is somehow a political attack on a certain segment of people, and you say it's not. So how would you get them to understand that that is not the point of your book?
Well, it really isn't the point of the book, and I'll tell you that the most sympathetic character in the book is a conservative, and it's the guy who served in the military and who is a real conservative. And when I say conservative, I'm not talking about QAnon or anything like that. I'm talking about sort of a classic conservative values, right, who feels that those values are threatened by what the left is doing. And he is, in a way, the most sympathetic character because he evolves the most. Almost everybody else is dug in the way a lot of us are. We're dug in, but he isn't. And it's not that he stops being a conservative. It's that there are tragedies in his life that open his heart, and he is able to really connect with everybody on a much deeper level. And so to me, he's kind of the hero of the book. His brother, who's the history professor, is like a big, funny, charismatic character, and everybody loves Paul. And Garrett is the one, as he puts it, everybody loved Paul. I'm the guy standing at the door, making sure nothing bad happens. And he's the one, like he's a military guy. He's taking care of the country. He has conservative values, which I respect. And so there is a broad satirical element to the book, but it's not a one-sided book. And a lot of people have told me that they were, I had friends reading it early on, and they said what struck them the most was that it's very even-handed. It's not making fun of people who don't happen to believe what I believe. As a writer, and you're a writer, it's about inhabiting other people, what other people believe. It's like walking in their shoes. And, and to me, and we can talk about this later, but the work that I do with the Writers Guild Initiative is about empathy. And it's about building these bonds with other people who are not like you and don't believe what you believe. But to me, that's the reason I wrote the book. It's a very heartfelt book. It's pretty funny, but it's a very heartfelt book about human connection, which is so under fire in so many ways. right now. And I think it's exacerbated by social media, frankly. I think it's too easy to go after people and to insult people and threaten people's lives and do all of that stuff. So my book is the opposite of that.
Coming up, more with Ricard Dresser, screenwriter, playwright, and author of It Happened Here. You're listening to The Charles Love Show on AM 560, The Answer.
We return to The Charles Love Show on AM 560, The Answer. Once again, here's Charles Love.
Are you tired of summer nights in Maine?
Welcome back. We are talking with Ricard Dresser, screenwriter, playwright, and author of It Happened Here. In the last segment, he gave us a brief overview of the book and indicated he wanted both sides to be able to read the book and feel that there was something there for them. In this segment, we discuss social media, the media, and Hollywood, and as an insider, how he sees the partisanship playing itself out. Yeah, and you're right about the sort of social media in the sense that it's not just that you're removed from it, so it's easy to do the attack, but it's like we're like the little hamster in the test because you get a little jolt for it, you get a little bonus, like it's a treat. Ooh, yeah. You went after that guy. Here's a treat. So that tasted good. I want another treat. So it kind of incentivizes you to continue to do that. You get bonuses for being snarky. So I don't post nearly as much as a lot of people, but I post stuff, but it's either here's an article or a comment about, hey, what should we do about this? But that doesn't get it. Nobody wants to see. They don't get likes for that. Yeah. Why didn't you call anybody a name, right?
Yeah, I know. But also the algorithms, they lead us to conflict. You know, and I think obviously there's always conflict. There's always been conflict in this country. And usually it's on some level, it's healthy. It's how we work things out. It's how we become a better country. But I feel like now it's so kind of vicious and personal and petty. It's like we can disagree and respect each other. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do now. Because if you spend a lot of time on social media, as you said, you get the treats, you get the buzz. You know, it's a narcotic. You know, we're living in this narcotized kind of environment where everything gives us a jolt.
So let's get to a little bit of reality for a moment too, because obviously you are a playwright, so you are able to tell a story. So you did this book in the way that you do, but the muse was what you were seeing every day, right? You were taking all this information in. So we obviously have been seeing things, like you say, there's been conflict for a while. That's not new, but something has to feel, I mean, you tell me if you disagree, but something feels a little different about it for the last, 4 to 5 years. So why do you think that it feels different? I mean, not just the conflict, there's always been conflict, but what's different about this divisiveness from years past?
To me, what's different now is in the past, we've always had generally accepted objective truth. There are things that we accept on both the left and the right as the truth. And then the conflict is about what does that mean to us? Is that better for us? Is that worse for us? We're living in a time now where there is no generally accepted truth. And I teach screenwriting at Columbia, in the film school at Columbia. Mm-hmm. And I tell my students, we as writers are the essential workers. We are essential workers. And the reason we're essential workers is because a democracy cannot exist without the truth. If you take the truth away, you're not in a democracy anymore. And so I feel that is the big conflict. And to me, there was the long struggle between left and right has been, until however many years, wherever you want to put it, has been essentially healthy, because it's sort of like a check on the excesses of the other. And frankly, most people in this country, it's simple, I think, what they want. They want a job and they want education for their children. They want to be able to live their lives. And if you put together the basic things that people want, that's a very centrist kind of position. So the banging back and forth between left and right often serves a centrist position. But I don't think we're in that place at all now. And that is obviously one of the reasons I wrote the book, that I don't think we're living in a time where there's a generally accepted objective truth.
That's a great point. I put it, in a very simple fashion too. I just say it used to be that we were debating and arguing about how to get somewhere, but we all wanted to go to the same place. Like it would be like if we both want to be rich, but you say this is the way to do it, and I say this is the way to do it. So we might debate on that, but we're not really at each other's throat because we want the same thing. So that may not necessarily be the case now, right? And we lost the ability to say that I have an opinion, I'm strong in my opinion. Doesn't mean I can't be convinced that I'm wrong, but I truly believe this. I've thought about it and I believe this. But it doesn't mean if your opinion is different that you're evil, right? So now we're at the point that everybody's evil. Everybody has an ulterior dark motive for wanting to raise the minimum wage. There's an evil reason why you want to do that, or for wanting only people to come in, but want them to do it legally. No, there's an evil reason why you don't want them. Everything has to be maybe I just think it's better. Maybe I just, whatever. If I'm wrong, convince me that I'm wrong, but don't start with the attacks. And I think that may be a shift. Obviously, you add an accelerant of social media and all these other things in there. But you talk about the importance of the writers, and I think that's important. But you say they're essential workers, and they're essential because somebody's got to tell the truth. But you've been in this industry, so I can't see it from the inside. But do you think that, and I don't blame them, I'm not one of those people to say it's their fault. I talk about the media and writing and Hollywood and all that kind of stuff, but I look at it as a circle, not a line. So, because they're all copying each other, right? The guy, we see stuff in a movie or TV show and we emulate that, but that guy, just like your book, wrote that because he saw a story somewhere. So it's a symbiotic relationship. So you can't just say everything that's happening in society is because of Hollywood. It's silly. But at the same time, they do take what's out there and they have an opinion and they take some fact and then they say, I want a narrative, and they create, like I referenced Law and Order earlier. So when they rip from the headline, they put that extra twist in it, right? So people see that, and then now we're adding that on. So it's not to blame, but do you see that they are, whether intentional or not? I think sometimes, to be fair, I like to assume positive intent. So for some, it's intentional, but I don't think most of them are doing it from a negative standpoint. They're doing it because that's what they see. So this is what I see, and I'm just painting you a picture of what I see. So do you think that that's part of it, and it's causing them to not necessarily stick with the truth, I guess?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, and I don't really know the answer. What I always trust and what I encourage my students to do is really write from the heart. That, and I do this in the workshops too. It's like everybody, if I'm talking to a group of people, formerly incarcerated prisoners, I say, each one of you has something that nobody else in the world has. And that's your point of view on the world, and be true to that, because nobody else has that. And so if you are trying to copy something else that's successful, you're not going to be able to do it because that came from something else. But also that doesn't take us any further. What I'm always interested in is what people's perception of the world is, whether it's a memoir or whether it's fiction or whatever it is. Now, having said that, in Hollywood, there's a line, something like, imitation is the sincerest form of television, which is, it's like, if something is successful, if there's it's like, I love baseball, and the conventional wisdom was baseball movies never make money. And then there was like Bull Durham, and it's like, well, that movie made money. And then there were other Major League, and then baseball movie. Then the conventional wisdom was you can make a baseball movie. But until that happens, it's all generated by money. It's generated by commercial success. And that's what Hollywood is. And I think that's sort of different from somebody going out and writing a book, somebody writing a play, somebody, some of my students, I think, are going to go on and make their own independent movies where there's much more freedom in terms of expressing a point of view, much less money, but much less, but much less interference. So it's a really good question, because I think right now a lot of people blame the media for everything. And there are times when it's absolutely true. I think a lot of times news coverage tends to be very superficial. It's like boom, 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 and it never sort of goes down into what's really going on. And I think movies do the same thing. It's like trying to capture something that's in the air, and that's in a commercial way. So yeah, there is the media is certainly not blameless, but that's not the whole deal.
Coming up, more with Ricard Dresser, screenwriter, playwright, and author of It Happened Here. You're listening to The Charles Love Show on AM 560, The Answer.
You're listening to The Charles Love Show on AM 560, The Answer, with your host, Charles Love.
Oh, life's a game of give and take. To prevent the show heartache, life's a game of give and take.
Welcome back. We're talking to Ricard Dresser, playwright, screenwriter, and author of It Happened Here. Before, I was talking about some of the issues we face from a partisanship standpoint. Here I give an example from the Atlanta shootings. I just think that, of course, it's my own opinion, so I'm going to be partial to it. But I think that the people on the right who are complaining about some things are technically right about complaining about some of the things they complain about, but they're off the mark when trying to figure out why it's a problem. They want to say it's because there's some leftist push. I'm like, no, if it's media, we can only do so many news stories. There's a guy who's picking which stories. So maybe he doesn't know that he's internalizing and picking certain stories because, that's interesting, but it's interesting because of what he's interested in, but it's not like some evil, sinister plot. So I give you an example. I was just on the phone with somebody about the news yesterday. You obviously know about the mass shooting in Atlanta at the Parlor. I'm in New York and I'm watching the New York local news. So they were doing the news last night and they say 6 Asian women were killed, 6 Asian women. Did you know Asian women were killed? There's an attack on Asian women. And then they cut to the response in New York. So I'm saying, interesting. This guy killed 8 people. And for a minute and a half, they kept saying 6 Asian women were killed. So they just totally ignored the other 2 people who were killed because they weren't Asian women.
Right.
Do I think that they have some motive against the whatever race or gender the other 2 people were? No, it's just like, that's the narrative we're spinning. So that's what we're going to focus on, not realizing, and these are media professionals, not me, not realizing that you just ignored the other 2 people. You never said 8 people were killed in that whole segment.
Right. No, it's interesting. And that story, it's a really good example because, it's unfolded incredibly quickly, but the initial reporting of it was exactly as you say. And then after that, what came out was that the guy who did the shooting said he had some kind of sexual addiction and he came from a very strict Christian family, and going to these places, these massage parlors, he was eliminating doing things that he shouldn't be doing and everything. And the story gets more complicated. And so it's just, I guess that's what I'm talking about. You're talking about it too. The idea that the story is characterized in a particular way. Right. And so I think it's characterized that way in this case because there has been a huge rush of anti-Asian violence. Right. And whatever this guy's psychological problems are, he did kill 6 Asian women.
He did. He also killed 8 people. I want my life to matter. If I'm one of the other, if I'm the other 2 guys, I'm somewhere saying, hey, he killed
what about me? What about me too?
One other quick one is I watch a lot of procedural TV shows, and I do it a lot, like the cop and political shows, but then it became kind of like a social experiment. And I wrote about this, how there were too few blacks in all these TV roles. And when you saw them, they were always Huggy Bear, right? They were always the criminal or whatever. Yeah. So we needed to show them in a positive light. 100% agree with that. It was cool. So you see somebody being a lawyer or a president or whatever, you're like, that's cool. But then the season started about 2 years ago, and I started watching. I'm like, whoa, now we're going too far. And I think I looked at 15 shows, and every single show I watched, either it was about somebody who's like so the FBI director was a black man, the CIA director was black, the president was black, or it might be about a cop like Chicago PD, for instance. But when he goes to his higher ups, the chief of police and the mayor and everybody's black. So now we just like, okay, you said that there were too many blacks who were drug dealers. Fine. The whole country's run by blacks now. I just solved the problem. And it just makes me laugh. I'm like, come on, that's not really what we meant, but okay. But I don't think that's intentional. I think they think, it's a good thing. We want to see some more people. And then you talk about the imitation. So they're like, the other people do it. It got great rave reviews for doing it. They don't step back and look at all the shows and like, oh my God, every show has a black judge, a black CEO, a black president, a black mayor, a black what? How did that happen, right? So because they're never looking at the whole, they're looking at my show on my network.
Right. I know, and people think that's a solution, and in fact, it does make a difference. The perception. If you're a 10-year-old black kid and you are seeing powerful black characters on a show, I think that does make a difference. Yeah. It doesn't mean every president on television has to be black. Well,
I think the bigger difference was just to stop showing us all as drug dealers.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's fine to see a lawyer and stuff, but we saw an occasional lawyer, but we thought it was one lawyer to 97,000 drug addicts. Why are none of the drug addicts white? That's the bigger thing. You're showing me negative, as everybody keeps thinking the solution is to show more positive. No, stop showing so much negative.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. It makes the white kid in the suburbs think every black kid is a rapper, a drug addict, or whatever. But I'm like, most of us are just like you, but nobody wants to put that on TV, right? So if they do put us on TV and we're not a criminal, we have to be a lawyer. Why can't I just be, that's why I like Rock, right? Rock, remember Rock on Fox?
Yeah.
I forgot what he was. He was like a bus driver, whatever. He was a regular guy, but he wasn't a criminal, right? We don't have to either be drug cartel guy or president. There's many of us that you show many flavors. That's the issue. The issue isn't the people in leadership role or drug dealer. It's like show a swath, because white people, we get to see everybody. We get to see the bus driver, the comedian. We get to see, rich guy, poor guy, everybody. Black is either. Which one do you want to be? CIA director or criminal? So, tell your friends that, and maybe we can, make some real changes. But
yeah. Well, it's true. It's true. What you're saying is that a black character is still, in a sense, symbolic, and a white character is not.
Coming up, more with Ricard Dresser, screenwriter, playwright, and author of It Happened Here. You are listening to The Charles Love Show on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, more of The Charles Love Show on AM 560, The Answer, with your host, Charles Love.
Welcome back. We are talking with Ricard Dresser, screenwriter, playwright, and author of It Happened Here. Here we reach our point where we talk about solutions and things we can do. And he mentions an interesting twist on some things we can probably do to get more people involved. And I talk about the lack of civics and the importance of bringing that back.
What do you think? I want to get an idea of both from what you see happening and after the transition, and in your book, what you kind of painted to, I'm assuming, to also get people to look at each other and don't just cut the other side off. But we're not there yet, clearly. So what do you see happening, or how do you see we bring it back to normal level of friction?
I wish I had that answer, but to that, because I really struggle with it. And I feel like what we're just talking about in terms of race, I feel the country is in this incredibly awkward place where coming to terms with something politically and racially, and people don't quite know what to do. And so it's between the drug dealer and the president. It's that kind of thing. It's like, but I feel that is a much broader issue of what kind of country do we want to live in? And it's like, I like the way you put it earlier. Like before we all wanted to go to the same place, but we had different routes to get there. Now, I'm not sure we all want to go to the same place. And that is very concerning, because I think, and obviously I'm not the first person to say this, but it's sort of what my book is about, is that democracy is hanging by a thread right now. And I think that this, and we don't need to get into the weeds with politics, but I just think that this Voting Rights Act is so important. because I think it's important that everybody who's eligible have the chance to vote. If that isn't true, then it's not really a democracy. And there's no perfect democracy, but if there's too much of a limitation on who can vote, then everything gets distorted. So I just feel like there are certain basic things that have to happen, and everybody's voice needs to be heard. And that's going to steer us, I hope, in the right direction. And I think because I am pathologically optimistic, I think that people need to find ways to connect with each other. You know, there's something that in the past, I would have really objected to that I think would really help now, which is some kind of mandatory service, either to the military, to teaching, to serving the country in some way. For like, you got to do 2 years before you hit 30. And if you're going to be a doctor, medical school qualifies, anything like that. But I think, you know, I work with a lot of people in the military. And one of the things that the military has always done has thrown people together who are from very different backgrounds, different parts of the country. And there's a common goal, like survival, you know? And it's like, I've got your back, you've got my back. And once you're in that situation where, you know, it's like a tribe, it's like the whole tribe depends on what each one of us do in the job. People who go through that, I think, have a very different feeling about other people in the country who are politically and socially and economically different from them. And I think also you have not only a different feeling about each other, but you have a different feeling about the country because you actually have served the country. You have gone someplace where they need teachers and you've been a teacher for a couple of years. I think that there are things that can really bring this country together. We're nowhere close to it. But I really do. I started thinking about this from talking to people in the military. Just, wow, there was, the extremes, the opposite people having each other's back is.
And they find a way to work together.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's huge.
I agree. I think that another thing is the fact that we lost civics in our education. So most people don't know. So you have people out here, you talk about the heat of social media, but you also have people out here arguing about stuff that are just ignorant to what democracy means and what our Constitution is and what it says so they're saying that you shouldn't do this, that, or the other, but they don't know because we don't teach it anymore.
I totally agree. I don't know when it stopped. I don't know why it stopped, but it seems like, people coming into this country who have to pass a citizenship test know much more than most of the people who live here.
That's so funny. You follow me, you're going to hear about something I'm working on that's totally specific to that. But you're absolutely right. They don't even know what these people have to do to become citizens, and you're a birthright citizen, and you don't know half the stuff that they had to take in that test.
Right.
You talk about voting so important. Everybody who has a right to vote is voter. I'm not saying you're wrong, but it's so funny. I look at it, I was like, yeah, but you're fighting for, I need a right to vote. But I say, who's your alderman? Who's your city councilman? Who's your senator? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So you're going to get that right. And then you're going to go and say, Mama, who should I vote for? Or just say, vote for the Republican because my daddy's a Republican, or vote for a Democrat. So you're getting the right to vote. But I'm like, can we teach you a little bit something to do? But, I don't know. Like you say, we have a long way to go, but all these conversations are important. And that's why I think my little piece is to have as many conversations as I can with people who have insight like you and do different things and, who don't necessarily agree with me. I ideally would want this show to be 90% people who don't agree with me. They just tend to be afraid to come on because they think I'm going to attack them. But I never have. I'm like, what? Yeah. Listen to the audio, Yeah.
Yeah. In my mind, there's very little of that out there. Yeah. It's like if you watch Fox, you see one thing. If you watch MSNBC, you see another thing.
Right. And it's so slanted. You almost have to watch both to get the middle. And nobody's got that kind of time.
Right. Yeah, you have to retire and devote your life to watching television.
Coming up, our final segment with Ricard Dresser, screenwriter, playwright, and author of It Happened Here. You are listening to The Charles Love Show on AM 560, The Answer.
The Charles Love Show continues on AM 560, The Answer. Here's Charles Love.
And need. Dollar, that's what I need.
Welcome back. This is our final segment with Richard Dresser, playwright, screenwriter, and author of It Happened Here. In this segment, we talk about the important work he's doing with the Writers Guild Initiative.
Lastly, like I said, I don't want to leave without talking about the wonderful thing you do with the Writers Guild Initiative. So tell people what that is and what you do.
Yeah, it's under the umbrella of the Writers Guild East. And 12 years ago, several writers, myself included, we started a foundation. And there was money for a foundation, but a foundation didn't exist. We thought we can do anything we want. And so what we decided to do was try to give a voice to populations that are not being heard. And this was like 2008. And, there were a lot of people serving in the military and nobody was really talking about it. So we started working with the military. We figured out a way of doing it. And we got great writers. And Wounded Warriors, the national organization, found out what we were doing and sent us to San Antonio to work with wounded veterans, and then sent us to the Landstuhl Hospital, a NATO hospital in Germany, to work with doctors suffering from compassion fatigue. And then we work with caregivers. And then over the last 12 years, we have expanded, and we're always, like, the latest workshop we're doing is LGBT asylum seekers in Massachusetts, people suffering horrible abuse in Uganda who came to this country. And we're also working with nurses on the front line of COVID, and Witness to Innocence, which is exonerated death row prisoners. And, it's not about, just speaking for me personally, it has opened up the world in an extraordinary way. I'm in touch with and friends with people that I never would have encountered any other way. And that's a lot of where the book came from, is this feeling of humanity that we need to connect. And in these workshops, the writing that comes out of the workshops is extraordinary because, they have real stories to tell. Like I sometimes tell them, I say, you have real stories to tell. I just make stuff up, It's like,
truth is stranger than fiction.
Yes, absolutely. But it's a great organization, and I'm president of it now, and I'm really connected to the work we're doing. We have a gala coming up. Unfortunately, it has to be an online gala, but we've got Meryl Streep and Tony Shalhoub and a wonderful cast of actors reading the work that has come out. So for these writers, it's just a great opportunity to
That's awesome. Tell people where they can find that gala, if they can still register. I don't know if it's...
Yes, Writers Guild Initiative.org.
Mm-hmm.
We tried to make the name of the website as difficult as possible to get to. Just Writers Guild Initiative. Google it, go there, and I think you'll really get on board with what we're doing, because it is not a political organization. It is about the people who get passed over and their voice is not heard. So that's what we're doing. And we do it all over the country, except during a pandemic, we do it on Zoom. But I'm very hopeful right now that we're going to be back in person soon.
He is Richard Dresser, award-winning playwright, screenwriter, and author of It Happened Here. It's been great talking with you, and we should keep in touch. I think you're doing some really cool stuff I'd like to find out more about.
I would love that. It was great talking to you, Charles. And I want to talk more about your work in education. So let's keep in touch.